Get out of here, Aisha. You're making a fool of me. Marcus's venomous words sliced through the glitz of the New York gala, shattering the clinking glasses and jazz hum. Aisha's radiant smile froze, her heart plummeting as her husband dragged her from her colleagues, unaware that Victor Hale, her powerful boss, watched it all. Humiliation burned, but what followed would unravel a betrayal far crueler than this public scene, exposing Marcus's jealousy and Victor's deceit. Will Aisha's brilliance rise from the ashes of their envy? Stay tuned to find out. Join our storytelling family. Subscribe to catch our latest tales of resilience and share where you're tuning in from, city or vibe. What secrets lie behind Victor's calculating gaze? How will Aisha turn betrayal into triumph? Don't miss a moment of this gripping journey. Keep listening to uncover the truth. The New York skyline glittered like a crown of diamonds, its lights piercing the velvet night and reflecting off the towering glass walls of the rooftop penthouse where Apex Global hosted its grand gala. The air hummed with the low buzz of ambition, clinking champagne flutes, the soft strains of a jazz quartet weaving through conversations laced with deals and dreams. This was no ordinary gathering. It was the launch of the year's most ambitious fintech project, a fusion of AI-driven sustainable investments that promised to reshape the financial world. Amid the sea of tailored suits and sleek gowns, symbols of white privilege and power, stood Aisha Thompson, a beacon of unyielding grace and intellect. At 32, Aisha was the epitome of poised elegance, her dark skin glowing under the ambient lights like polished obsidian. Her long, silky black hair cascaded in gentle waves, styled with a sophisticated curl that framed her sharp cheekbones and full lips, exuding an aura of timeless beauty. She wore a stunning emerald green evening gown that hugged her lithe figure like a second skin, accentuating every curve with effortless allure. The deep V neckline plunged boldly to her waist, adorned with a shimmering gold clasp that served as the perfect pivot between sensuality and refinement, a subtle statement of her confidence. The skirt flowed long and ethereal, slit high on one thigh to reveal her toned legs, allowing glimpses of strength and femininity with each step. Paired with strappy high heels that clicked assertively against the polished floor, her ensemble transformed her into a modern goddess, commanding attention in a room where she was the only black woman at her executive level. Aisha clutched a flute of sparkling water, her dark eyes alight with purpose as she navigated the crowd near the edge of the rooftop. She had fought tooth and nail to reach this pinnacle, from a scrappy intern fresh out of college to head of business development at Apex Global. Her journey was paved with late nights poring over algorithms, dismantling biases in boardrooms dominated by white men, and proving her worth twice over. Tonight, she felt the invisible barriers cracking. She had rehearsed her pitch for weeks, her voice steady and commanding, as she engaged Henri Laurent, a silver-haired investor from Europe whose nod could seal a multi-million-dollar deal. "That's innovative," Henri said, leaning in closer, his eyes sparkling with genuine interest as Aisha described her vision for integrating AI into green investments. Biometric authentication tied to sustainable portfolios. High returns with an eco-conscious edge. "You've got a real vision here, Ms. Thompson." Aisha's chest swelled with quiet pride, her emerald gown catching the breeze and shimmering like a jewel under the stars. For the first time that evening, she felt seen, not as the diversity hire whispered behind her back, but as a force reshaping the industry. Her words flowed with confidence, her long hair swaying gently as she gestured animatedly. "Imagine AI optimizing portfolios in real time, prioritizing ethical investments without sacrificing profits. It's not just business, it's the future." Unbeknownst to her, a storm brewed across the rooftop. Marcus Johnson, her husband of 8 years, pushed through the throng of elites, his jaw clenched like a vice, eyes burning with a raw, unguarded fury. At 35, he was still the tall, broad-shouldered man she had fallen for in college, the ambitious dreamer who once matched her stride for stride. But life had twisted him. His business ventures had crumbled under poor decisions and market crashes, leaving him adrift in resentment. While Aisha soared, Marcus stewed at home, her late nights and growing confidence eclipsing his failures. He hadn't been invited tonight, He'd followed her from their apartment, suspicion gnawing at him like a poison. Seeing her now, laughing lightly with Henri, her hand gesturing with that effortless poise, the slit in her gown revealing a flash of thigh, something inside Marcus snapped. To him, it wasn't networking. It was betrayal. A stranger's gaze stole what was rightfully his. His world narrowed to a pinpoint. Aisha, radiant in her emerald gown, and the fire in his chest demanding reckoning. He didn't pause to greet anyone, ignoring the jazz's sultry hum and the clatter of silverware. His footsteps pounded like thunder in his ears. Aisha! His voice sliced through the chatter like a blade, raw and accusatory. Heads turned, murmurs rippling outward as her smile froze mid-sentence. The warmth drained from her face, replaced by a mask of shock and dread. Henri stepped back, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What the hell are you doing?" Marcus demanded, his tone booming enough to draw eyes from every corner of the rooftop. "You're making me look like a fool, flirting with this guy like I'm not even alive." His face flushed with alcohol-fueled rage, veins bulging in his neck as he closed the distance. Aisha's breath caught, her fingers tightening around the flute until her knuckles paled. The emerald fabric of her gown suddenly felt constricting, a spotlight on her vulnerability. "Marcus, please," she whispered urgently, her voice trembling, but laced with desperation. "Not here. Not like this." But he didn't listen. His hand clamped onto her arm, firm, yanking her away from Henri and the circle of colleagues who now stood frozen, their conversations evaporating into stunned silence. The jazz faltered, a saxophone note lingering awkwardly in the air, like an unfinished accusation. Isha stumbled slightly, her high heels catching on the sleek floor, her long black hair swaying wildly as she fought to maintain balance. The slit in her gown parted with the motion, exposing more than just her leg. It laid bare her humiliation. "You're embarrassing me," Marcus hissed, his voice carrying a venom she'd only glimpsed in private arguments before. "Laughing like that, touching his arm, flirting right in front of everyone. You think I'm blind? You think I don't see how you've changed? Parading around in that dress like some trophy wife chasing the next big deal?" "Marcus, stop!" she pleaded, her voice low and frantic, eyes darting to the faces around her. Colleagues, investors, all watching with a mix of shock, pity, and judgment. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Is that her husband? What a scene! Poor thing, but in this industry..." Her face burned, a humiliation so sharp it chilled her to the bone, contrasting the warmth of her glowing skin. She tried to wrench her arm free, but his grip tightened, dragging her toward the glass-paneled elevator. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, their silence deafening, louder than any gossip. Aisha's heart pounded erratically, each forced step stripping away the confidence she'd meticulously built. Her emerald gown, once a symbol of power, now felt like a target, its shimmer mocking her under the lights. The gold clasp at her neckline glinted accusingly, as if highlighting her exposed vulnerability. She glanced desperately around, praying for intervention. But the elites averted their eyes. Too polite, too detached to interfere in what they deemed a domestic matter. Then a voice boomed over the speakers, smooth and commanding, slicing through the tension like a lifeline. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest of honor, the visionary behind the fintech revolution, Victor Hale." The crowd stirred, a ripple of applause breaking the spell. Aisha twisted her head back, her eyes locking with Victor's. He stood at the center of the rooftop, 50 years old, his presence magnetic. A tall, impeccably suited white man with steel-gray eyes that pierced like daggers. He'd seen everything. Marcus's outburst, her public unraveling, the raw exposure of her carefully crafted poise. His expression held no warmth, only a calculating stillness that twisted her stomach into knots. She didn't know what he thought, but she knew it mattered profoundly. Victor Hale wasn't just her boss. He was the gatekeeper of her future at Apex Global, the man who could elevate or erase her with a single word. Marcus didn't relent, hauling her into the elevator as the doors slid shut with a soft whoosh. The last image seared into her mind was Victor's face, his eyes still fixed on her, a shadow of judgment lingering like smoke. The hum of the party faded, replaced by the suffocating quiet of the elevator's descent. Aisha's arm throbbed where Marcus's fingers had dug in, but the ache in her chest was sharper, a dagger of betrayal and loss. She stared at the floor, her mind racing through the wreckage. Her ambition, her marriage, the fragile balance she'd fought so hard to maintain. Marcus's jealousy had cracked it all open, and Victor's gaze promised consequences she couldn't yet fathom. As the elevator dinged, opening to the cool New York night, Aisha's resolve flickered to life amid the ruins. The city lights stretched before her, vast and unyielding, whispering that this was only the beginning. She didn't know how, but she would fight to reclaim her place, to rise from this humiliation stronger, her emerald gown a memory of the woman who refused to break. The wind tugged at her long hair, carrying the promise of storms yet to come. The morning sun spilled through the kitchen window, casting harsh shadows across the table where Aisha sat, her coffee untouched and cold. Her hands trembled slightly, gripping the mug as if it could anchor her against the flood of memories from the night before. The venom in Marcus's voice, the iron clamp of his fingers on her arm, the suffocating drop of the elevator as the party's glow faded. Humiliation lingered like a bruise, pulsing with every heartbeat, turning her triumph into a spectacle she'd never anticipated. She stared at the laptop screen filled with fintech notes, but her mind replayed the scene relentlessly. The whispers, the pitying glances, the way her confidence had shattered like fragile glass. Marcus's footsteps broke the silence, heavy and deliberate as he entered the room. His face was still taut with the same unyielding anger, no trace of remorse softening his features. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, his eyes boring into her like accusations. "You made me look like a damn fool last night," he said, his voice low but edged with sharpness, slicing through the quiet like a knife. "Laughing with that investor, acting like I don't even exist, flirting right there for everyone to see." Aisha's chest tightened, her fingers curling harder around the mug. She forced calm into her words, though her voice wavered. "I was working, Marcus. Networking. It's my job. Talking about AI integrations, sustainable models. That's all it was." He scoffed, a bitter sound that echoed off the walls. "Your job? You were flirting, Aisha. Everyone saw it. The way you leaned in. That dress hugging every curve like an invitation. Don't play innocent with me. You've changed, always chasing the next big thing, leaving me in the dust." She opened her mouth to argue, to explain that her pitch to Henri had been about biometric security and ethical profits, not betrayal. But the words caught in her throat, choked by futility. What was the point? Marcus's jealousy had warped everything. Her ambition twisted into a weapon against him, her success a mirror reflecting his failures. She remembered their early days when he'd called her his rock, proud of her drive before Zoe's arrival shifted her world to motherhood. Now, her return to the forefront seemed to unravel him thread by thread. "I wasn't flirting," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, laced with exhaustion. "You humiliated me in front of my colleagues, my boss. Do you even understand what you've done?" His eyes narrowed, flashing with defensiveness. "You humiliated me, parading around like you're better than us now, better than the life we built. I see how they look at you, those white executives, handing you opportunities on a silver platter while I scrape by. And you lap it up, don't you? Forgetting where you came from, forgetting me." The argument spiraled, his accusations drowning her defenses like a relentless tide. Zoe's laughter drifted faintly from the next room, a fragile reminder of innocence amid the storm, but it only fueled the ache in Aisha's heart. She felt trapped, her achievements poisoned by his resentment, her home a battlefield where love had curdled into control. Her phone buzzed sharply on the table, cutting through the tension like a lifeline or a noose. A message from the firm. Meeting with Victor Hale at 10:01 a.m. Her stomach plummeted, a cold dread settling in. Victor, the man who'd witnessed her public unraveling, held her career in his palm. One wrong word from him, and everything she'd built could crumble. She stood abruptly, brushing her long, wavy black hair behind her shoulder and grabbing her bag. "I have to go," she said, avoiding his glare, her voice flat to mask the turmoil. He didn't respond, but his silence thrummed with unspoken fury, another layer of accusation hanging in the air like smoke. In the sleek lobby of the office, Aisha sat rigidly, her hands clasped over her notebook, every passing glance feeling like a judgment. The marble floors and modern art blurred into a backdrop for her anxiety. She'd spent weeks earning quiet praise for her fintech designs, but last night's chaos threatened to erase it all. Would Victor see her as a liability now, a distraction in a world that demanded unflinching poise? Her heart raced as the assistant waved her in. Mr. Hale is ready. Victor's office was a fortress of influence. Mahogany desk, shelves lined with accolades that spoke of unchallenged power. He sat back in his chair, his presence commanding despite the measured calm in his voice. Aisha, have a seat, he said, gesturing to the leather chair opposite him. She obeyed, her posture straight as steel, bracing for the blow. But his tone was unexpectedly gentle, almost paternal. I saw what happened last night, he began, his eyes steady but not unkind. I've witnessed men like your husband try to clip the wings of talent like yours. It's not uncommon in this cutthroat world, but you're here because of your skill, Aisha, not his outbursts. Her breath caught, a wave of relief flooding her like sunlight piercing clouds. She hadn't expected this empathy from the man whose gaze had seemed so icy amid the chaos. Thank you, Mr. Hale, she said, her voice steadying as gratitude warmed her. I'm sorry for the scene. It won't happen again. I promise. He raised a hand, dismissing her apology with a wave. It's not about apologies, it's about perception. This firm thrives on trust and image, and last night raised some eyebrows. But I believe in you, your pitches, your innovative edge. That's why I want you working directly under me on the fintech project. It's the best way to manage the narrative, to show the firm and our clients that you're focused, capable. You'll report to me, and I'll guide you through this storm. Aisha's heart lifted, a spark of hope igniting amid the ashes. This was a lifeline, a chance to salvage her reputation and prove her worth anew. I'd be honored, she replied, the words carrying a genuine flicker of optimism. He nodded, a faint smile crossing his lips. Good. Let's keep the focus on your work, where it belongs. As she left his office, her steps felt lighter, the weight of the previous night easing just a fraction. Yet as she returned to her desk and opened her sketches, a quiet unease stirred in her chest. Victor's words echoed. Manage the narrative. And something about them felt like a shadow, a subtle undercurrent of control she couldn't quite name. Was this truly salvation, or the first thread in a web she hadn't yet seen? The fluorescent glow of the open-plan office bathed Aisha's desk in a sterile light, her laptop screen displaying a half-finished sketch for the fintech project. It was late, the hum of distant traffic a faint reminder of the rooftop chaos 2 weeks prior, where Marcus's outburst had shattered her poise. Victor's offer to mentor her had seemed like salvation then. His words, "You're here because of your skill," a buoy in the storm of humiliation. But now as she traced the lines of her design, a creeping unease settled in her chest, coiling like a serpent. His guidance was morphing into a leash, tightening with every suggestion. The mentorship had begun with promise. In their first session, he'd praised her vision for AI-driven green investments, nodding as she outlined seamless integrations of biometric security and ethical algorithms. Bold thinking, he'd said, his voice smooth as silk. But today in the glass-walled conference room, his tone shifted like a gathering storm. This AI concept, he remarked, tapping her sketch with a pen, his eyes flicking over her notes dismissively. It's ambitious, Aisha, but too risky. Clients crave familiarity, safe elegance, not wild experiments. She blinked, her fingers tightening around her pencil, a spark of defiance flickering. It's sustainable and cost-effective, she countered, her voice steady but cautious, laced with the passion that had propelled her career. It aligns perfectly with the project's eco-ethos, optimizing returns while minimizing environmental impact. Victor's smile was thin, patronizing, like a teacher correcting a naive pupil. Trust me, I know how this game is played. Stick to neutral frameworks. Let's not gamble on unproven ideas. Her stomach twisted, the fire of her original vision dimming under his dismissal. She nodded, swallowing her protest. But each refinement from him felt like a chisel eroding her creativity. In meetings, he'd reframe her proposals, presenting them as polished evolutions of his genius, while she sat silent, reduced to a nodding shadow. His earlier phrase, manage the narrative, echoed in her mind, now tainted with an undercurrent of manipulation she hadn't anticipated. She felt like a guest in her project, her talent caged by his authority, her voice muffled in the echo chamber of his ego. At home, the tension mirrored her professional suffocation, a vice squeezing tighter with each passing day. Marcus's resentment had sharpened into a blade, his accusations a ritual as predictable as the setting sun. That evening, as Aisha set the table for dinner, Zoe chattered about her school art project, her laughter a fleeting balm against the gathering clouds. Marcus stormed in, his eyes dark with suspicion, ignoring their daughter's bright smile. "Late again," he snapped, his voice dripping with accusation. "Spending all your time with that boss of yours, huh? I bet you're loving the attention." Aisha's jaw clenched, her resolve fraying at the edges. "I was working, Marcus, on the project. You know that. It's not what you think." He laughed bitterly, a sound that cut like glass. "Working? Or chasing some high-powered fantasy while I'm stuck here, holding things together? You've changed, Aisha. You're not the woman I married, not anymore. Always in that office, whispering secrets with him, coming home smelling like success I can't touch." She turned away, focusing on Zoe's plate to shield her daughter from the venom, but the words stung like fresh wounds. "I'm doing this for us, for our future," she said quietly, though the sentiment rang hollow in her ears. Marcus's jealousy had twisted her ambition into a wedge, driving it deeper between them, just as Victor's guidance warped her work into something unrecognizable. She was ensnared in a double bind, controlled at home by suspicion, dominated at work by condescension. Each turn toward her dreams met with resistance that chipped away at her spirit. In the office, a flicker of light emerged unexpectedly. Jamal, the young intern, lingered after a team meeting, his eyes catching hers as Victor droned on about streamlined efficiencies. He'd been quiet until now, his presence unassuming amid the hierarchy. But as the room cleared, he approached her desk, clutching a folder, his voice soft but steady. "Your AI green idea," he said, glancing around to ensure privacy. "It was brilliant, revolutionary. I don't get why he shot it down like that. It's like he's afraid of anything that challenges the status quo." Aisha looked up, surprised by his candor, a warmth breaking through her guarded facade. "It's just how things operate here," she replied, her tone wary, testing the waters. He shook his head, a spark of defiance in his eyes. "No, it's not right. Your work stands out. It's innovative, inclusive. It should be heard, not buried under his refinements. You're the one pushing boundaries. Don't let him dim that." His words, simple yet earnest, pierced the fog of her doubt like a ray of dawn. For the first time in weeks, she felt truly seen. Not as a liability or a wife out of place, but as a visionary with something vital to contribute. A small smile tugged at her lips, her resolve stirring from its slumber. "Thank you, Jamal. That means more than you know." He nodded and walked away, leaving her with a fragile ember of hope. But as she returned to her sketch, Victor's laughter echoed from a nearby room, mingling with a client's. Her hope wavered, a whisper of fear creeping in. Was she deluding herself, thinking she could reclaim her voice under his shadow? That night, alone at her desk after hours, Aisha stared at her original fintech vision. Bold, uncompromised, alive with potential. Her fingers traced the lines, a quiet defiance rising in her chest like a tide. Victor's control, Marcus's accusations, they were walls, formidable but not impenetrable. She didn't know the path yet, but she would forge one, making her voice resound. The shadows lengthened around her, but within, a storm brewed beneath her calm exterior, poised to erupt. The conference room buzzed with electric anticipation, the air thick with the scent of fresh coffee and polished ambition as the final fintech presentation loomed. Aisha sat near the back, her notebook open but untouched, her heart a knotted tangle of fragile hope and gnawing dread. Weeks of Victor's mentorship had smothered her spark, his guidance reducing her bold innovations to bland, soulless replicas. AI frameworks stripped of their ethical edge. Biometric integrations dulled to corporate conformity. Yet she clung to the ember Jamal's encouragement had ignited. His words, "Your work should be heard," a quiet mantra echoing in her mind. She'd poured her soul into the project's core, a biophilic-inspired masterpiece blending sustainability with cutting-edge profitability, believing Victor's promise to let her shine. Today, she dared to think that might be her moment to reclaim the narrative. Victor stood at the front, his commanding presence amplified by the projector's glow, addressing the room with the ease of a conductor wielding his baton. Executives, investors, and designers leaned forward, their eyes locked on him as he launched into his spiel. The FinTech initiative, he declared, his voice resonant and assured, represents a pinnacle of elegance and innovation, a seamless fusion of technology and ethics. He clicked to the first slide, and Aisha's breath hitched like a caught thread. There it was, her design, her intricate AI green panels, her solar-integrated algorithms weaving nature with luxury. But Victor's words twisted the truth into a noose. This concept, he paused for dramatic effect, his eyes sweeping the room, is the culmination of my refined vision, honed over years of industry mastery. The room erupted in applause, colleagues nodding vigorously, investors murmuring approval like a chorus of validation. Aisha froze, her pen slipping from her fingers and clattering softly against the table, a tiny sound lost in the thunder of acclaim. Her design, her heart's labor, the late nights fueled by determination, the defiance against every unspoken barrier she'd faced as the outlier in the room, had been stolen. Victor's smile, sharp and triumphant, sliced deeper than Marcus's public tirade at the gala. It wasn't just theft, it was erasure, her brilliance repackaged as his crowning glory. She sat motionless as the applause washed over her, each clap a hammer striking her pride, reverberating through her core. The vision he'd once dismissed as too ambitious now paraded as his masterpiece, her contributions buried under his ego. The betrayal burned like acid, corroding the trust she'd foolishly placed in his post-gala kindness, the empathy that had masked a predator's intent. She wanted to rise, to shatter the illusion with a scream, but her body felt anchored, her voice locked in a vice of shock and rage. The meeting blurred into a haze, colleagues congratulating Victor as they filed out, their praise a symphony of ignorance. Aisha lingered, her hands trembling as she gathered her notes, her mind a whirlwind replaying his words. My vision, over and over, each echo a fresh wound. It felt like reliving the elevator's descent, Marcus's bruising grip, Victor's judgmental stare. But this was worse. Her intellect, her identity, stripped bare in front of those who should have championed her. As the room emptied, Jamal approached, his face pale and drawn, a folder clutched like a lifeline. Aisha, he whispered, glancing at the door with nervous urgency. We need to talk, now. They slipped into a quiet corner, the muffled hum of office life a distant veil. Jamal's eyes darted, but his voice held steady resolve. I found something, he said, opening the folder to reveal archived documents, yellowed pages, stamped with dates from years past. This is Victor's old proposal, rejected by the firm back then. Aisha's eyes scanned the pages, her pulse quickening like a drum beat building to a crescendo. The sketches were crude, mere shadows of her polished work, but the core elements, biometric ethics, green AI integrations, were unmistakable echoes. He's been sitting on this for ages, Jamal continued, his tone low and fierce. He saw your refinements, your fresh take, and co-opted it all, polished it with your ideas and claimed the credit. He used you from the moment he saw your vulnerability that night. The truth crashed over her like a relentless wave, cold and unforgiving, drowning the remnants of her illusions. Victor's empathy, his offer to manage the narrative after Marcus's scene, it had all been a calculated snare. He'd spotted her exposed fracture, the raw edge of her turmoil, and exploited it ruthlessly, positioning himself as savior while plundering her brilliance to revive his stale concepts. The pain was sharper, more visceral, because she trusted him, believed his support was a shield against the biases that shadowed her every step. Her long, wavy hair fell over her shoulder as she leaned back, closing her eyes against the onslaught, the weight of betrayal settling into her bones like lead. But beneath the agony, something primal stirred, an anger raw and unyielding, igniting like a spark on dry tinder. It burned away her doubt, forging it into steel. This wasn't just about ideas. It was about her essence, her fight to be seen as more than a token, more than a wife diminished by jealousy. Victor had underestimated her, viewing her as pliable clay rather than the architect of her destiny. "Thank you, Jamal," she said, her voice quiet but edged with emerging resolve, a steel core forming beneath the surface. He nodded, his expression a blend of relief and quiet fear. "I could get in serious trouble for digging this up," he admitted, his hands fidgeting with the folder's edge. "But it's wrong, what he's doing. You deserve better than to be his shadow." His risk, his quiet defiance, fanned the flames of her awakening. She wasn't merely a developer anymore. She was a warrior, honed by fire, and Victor had lit the match without realizing the inferno he'd unleash. As Jamal slipped away, leaving her alone with the damning pages, her fingers traced the archived sketches, her mind racing like a storm front gathering force. She wouldn't let this stand. Not this erasure, this calculated diminishment. She'd reclaim her work, her voice, her power. The lights above flickered faintly, casting elongated shadows that danced like omens. But Aisha's heart pounded not with fear, but with purpose. Victor's betrayal had cracked her world wide open, exposing its fragile underbelly, but it had also awakened a ferocity she hadn't known she possessed. A plan began to form in the recesses of her mind, sharp, deliberate, a blueprint for retribution waiting to unfold. The office lights flickered erratically, casting elongated shadows across Aisha's desk as she sat alone, the sting of Victor's betrayal still searing her veins like molten iron. His theft of her fintech design, a biophilic fusion of AI and sustainability, unearthed by Jamal's risky discovery of his dusty rejected proposal, had transformed her from a silenced innovator into a strategist forged in fire. Weeks of feeling like a ghost in her existence, creativity stifled by Victor's grip, home choked by Marcus's envy, had culminated in this pivotal shift. She was no longer the humiliated woman yanked from the gala. She was a predator in waiting, done being prey. Leaning back in her chair, her long, wavy hair brushing her shoulders, Aisha stared at the blank laptop screen, a canvas for her counterstrike. Victor's arrogance and Marcus's predictability were chinks in their armor, vulnerabilities she could exploit with surgical precision. She'd feign defeat, let them believe her spirit broken, while weaving a trap so intricate it would ensnare them both. Her fingers flew across the keys, sketching a new fintech proposal, a stunning atrium of interconnected algorithms, radiant with promise under simulated data flows. It was breathtaking, irresistible, a siren call of innovation blending seamless user interfaces with high-yield green investments. But buried within its elegance was a deliberate flaw. The core material, a cutting-edge composite of financial models, violated SEC regulations on transparency, embedding hidden risks of fraud that any thorough audit would flag as catastrophic. She knew Victor, in his hubris, would overlook the codes, too eager to claim another refinement. This was her weapon, disguised as a gift, a poisoned chalice tailored to his ego. At home, the plan crystallized further. The kitchen lay quiet, Zoe asleep upstairs, her earlier giggles a fleeting warmth against the chill of Marcus's brooding presence. He lounged on the couch, scrolling his phone with mechanical detachment, his resentment a palpable fog since their last clash. Aisha moved with calculated grace, placing her sketchpad on the counter, the flawed atrium design prominently displayed like bait on a hook. She lingered, pretending to tidy, knowing his eyes would snag on it, his jealousy a predictable snare. "You're still tinkering with that project?" he asked, his voice laced with disdain, not bothering to look up at first. "Thought your boss snatched it all up already, leaving you in the scraps." She shrugged, her tone laced with manufactured defeat, a performance honed from years of navigating his moods. "Just some loose ideas. They don't matter anymore." Not after everything. His gaze flicked to the sketch, his jaw tightening like a spring coiling. She saw the spark ignite, his compulsion to control, to drag her back to the diminished wife he craved, not the powerhouse she'd evolved into. Looks flashy, he muttered, his fingers subtly angling his phone to snap a photo before she could notice. Aisha turned away, concealing a flicker of satisfaction that bloomed like a secret flame. She knew he'd forward it to Victor, anonymously perhaps, hoping to undermine her, to expose her as overreaching and outmatched. It was precisely what she wanted. Marcus's envy, once her prison, now her unwitting lever. The next day, Victor summoned her to his office, his demeanor smug as he waved a printout of her sketch like a trophy. "This came to my attention," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, eyes glinting with predatory glee. "Bold but raw, unpolished edges everywhere. Still, there's a kernel of potential here." Aisha lowered her eyes, embodying the chastened subordinate, her heart pounding with veiled triumph beneath the facade. "I was just experimenting," she murmured, her voice threaded with feigned humility. "It's nowhere near finished. Rough drafts." His smile widened, a shark sensing blood in the water. "Lucky I caught wind of it then. I'll refine it, integrate it into the final plans. You're learning, Aisha, slowly but surely." He leaned back, steepling his fingers, oblivious to the noose tightening around him. She nodded demurely, excusing herself with a murmur of gratitude. But as she returned to her desk, her composure held like a dam against a raging river. The bait had been swallowed whole. Victor's arrogance blinded him to the fatal incompatibility with SEIC mandates. Back at her station, she pored over the regulations once more, confirming the composite's glaring violations, opaque transactions that screamed fraud under scrutiny. He wouldn't check. His rush to another victory would seal his downfall. Jamal passed by later, his eyes meeting hers with a silent question, concern etched in his brow. She gave a subtle shake of her head, signaling discretion. His support had sparked her fire, but this battle was hers alone. She couldn't risk his position further. The intern's courage had already given her the edge she needed. That night, in the solitude of her home office, Aisha stood before the mirror, practicing her delivery with the precision of a surgeon wielding a scalpel. "Mr. Hale," she intoned, her voice steady and measured, eyes locked on her reflection. "Can you confirm the atrium's compliance with SEC transparency standards?" The words were deceptively simple, but their lethality lay in the details, the way they'd unravel his facade in front of the board. She imagined the room, investors' faces shifting from admiration to doubt, Victor's confidence crumbling like sandcastles under a wave. Her reflection stared back, no longer the woman who'd stumbled in heels from public shame, but a force of reckoning, her features sharpened by resolve. The plan was a masterpiece of irony. Marcus's photo, Victor's theft, threads in a web she'd spun with her own hands. Yet doubt whispered at the edges, a shadow questioning if it would hold. What if Victor spotted the flaw? What if Marcus sensed her deception? She pushed it aside, drawing strength from the archived files Jamal had unearthed, reminders of Victor's pattern of pilfering. This wasn't vengeance for vengeance's sake. It was justice, a reclamation of her narrative from those who'd sought to script it for her. As the hours ticked by, Aisha refined the edges, double-checking the proposal's allure, ensuring the SEC breach was buried just deep enough to evade casual glances. Her fingers ached from typing, but adrenaline surged like electricity, banishing fatigue. Marcus slept in the next room, oblivious to the revolution brewing under his roof. Zoe's soft breathing from down the hall grounded her, a reminder of the stakes, not just her career, but the example she'd set for her daughter, a woman unbroken by betrayal. The mirror reflected her growing fire, her eyes alight with purpose. The final fintech meeting loomed like a battlefield, but she was armed now, her strategy a blueprint etched in cunning. Victor's hubris would meet her precision. Marcus's meddling would backfire spectacularly. She didn't know if it would be flawless, but she knew one truth. She'd fight with everything she had, turning their weapons against them in a symphony of poetic downfall. The conference room thrummed with the weight of high-stakes ambition, its atmosphere charged like a storm about to break. Aisha sat at the polished table, her notebook splayed open, fingers steady despite the thunderous pulse hammering in her chest. Weeks of Victor's betrayal, plundering her fintech designs, dismissing her ingenuity, had led to this razor-edged moment. Her trap, a deliberately flawed atrium proposal laced with SEC violations, now lurked in the final plans, sent unwittingly by Marcus to Victor. She'd rehearsed her strike endlessly, a single query on compliance, honed in the mirror until it gleamed like a blade. Today, Victor's overreach would collide with her precision, and she would seize back her voice. The space filled with executives, investors, and designers, their murmurs a symphony of expectation for the fintech unveiling. Victor positioned himself at the helm, his confidence a gleaming veneer as he clicked through slides with theatrical flair. This atrium, he proclaimed, projecting the tainted design Aisha had crafted, forms the beating heart of our initiative, sleek, sustainable, utterly revolutionary. The composite panels shimmered on screen, a deceptive allure of beauty doomed by their failure to meet transparency standards, embedding fraud risks that scream violation. Investors nodded, pens scratching furiously, blind to the fault line fracturing Victor's showcase. Aisha's heart raced, but her expression remained a mask of composure, eyes fixed on him with unyielding focus. She replayed the gala's grip of shame, Jamal's daring revelation of Victor's pilfered past, her nights forging this snare, while Marcus's jealousy played into her palm. She'd been a phantom in her own story, muted at work, shackled at home, but no more. Victor's monologue droned on, extolling his vision, each syllable fanning her simmering resolve. As he wrapped up, the room burst into applause, the sound a hollow mockery of her stolen aspirations. "Any questions?" Victor inquired, his smile smug, eyes skimming the assembly with casual dominance. Aisha raised her hand, the motion deliberate, slicing through the fading claps like a signal flare. "Mr. Hale," she said, her voice clear and calibrated, carrying the weight of suppressed fury. "Can you confirm the atrium's adherence to SEC transparency standards?" The room stilled, a collective inhale suspended in disbelief. Victor's smile faltered, a hairline crack in his polished facade. "Of course," he replied, his tone tightening like a noose drawing close. "It's been vetted exhaustively, every detail scrutinized." But his eyes darted to the slide, a flicker of uncertainty betraying the lie, his composure fracturing under the spotlight. Aisha pressed onward, her voice forging ahead like tempered steel. "The composite panels, don't they fall below SEC thresholds for fraud prevention? A glaring oversight that could unravel the entire project." Silence deepened, heavy as granite, the air electric with unspoken shock. An engineer at the table leaned forward, brow furrowed, rifling through his notes with growing alarm. "She's spot on," he muttered, his voice rising in conviction. "Those models embed opaque transactions, clear SEC breaches, ripe for penalties." Whispers ignited like sparks on dry grass, investors exchanging loaded glances, their assurance unraveling thread by thread. Victor's face drained of color, hands gripping the podium as if to steady a sinking ship. "There must be some mistake," he stammered, his once authoritative timbre cracking, desperation seeping through. But the room's focus shifted inexorably to Aisha, the tide turning in her favor. She rose, her long wavy hair catching the light as she clicked to her original design. A flawless atrium, compliant and visionary, pulsing with innovation. "This," she declared, her voice commanding the space, resonant with reclaimed authority, "is the submission I crafted, fully aligned with SEC mandates, sustainable, and primed for unparalleled returns." The assembly pivoted, murmurs evolving into nods of respect, eyes widening in dawning admiration. An investor broke the hush. "Why wasn't this the lead proposal? It outshines everything we've seen." Victor opened his mouth, words fumbling like scattered debris, but none emerged. His theft, his hubris, laid bare like a house of cards toppling in the wind. The meeting dissolved into a directive whirlwind. Aisha would helm the redesign, her blueprint the new cornerstone. As colleagues dispersed, their whispers now hymns to her acumen. Victor lingered, his gaze hollowed by defeat. She met his eyes without flinching, no longer the subordinate he'd belittled, but a titan who'd orchestrated his fall. Jamal caught her glance from across the room, his nod a silent salute to her victory. She'd alchemized his evidence into a devastating arsenal. Yet as she exited the room, triumph pulsed through her veins like adrenaline, incomplete and shadowed. Marcus's sabotage, funneling her sketch to Victor, echoed as a reminder of the domestic cage awaiting her unraveling. She'd conquered this arena, but the chains of her marriage loomed unresolved, a battle yet to wage. To amplify the drama, a video from the gala surfaced mid-meeting, projected unexpectedly by an anonymous tip, perhaps Jamal's final gambit. It replayed Marcus's tirade, his grip on her arm, the public drag through humiliation, Victor's impassive witness in the background. Gasps rippled anew, the footage underscoring Victor's exploitation of her vulnerability, his mentorship revealed as opportunistic predation. Investors recoiled, one declaring, "This isn't just oversight, it's manipulation." Preying on her moment of weakness, Victor's protests drowned in the uproar, his denials feeble against the visual indictment. The board chair intervened, voice stern. "Hale, your actions compromise our integrity. Consider this your exit." He turned to Aisha, respect etched in his tone. "Ms. Thompson, lead us forward. Your vision is the future we need." Applause swelled again, this time genuine, a wave crashing in her honor. She stood taller, the weight of validation lifting her. But beneath it, a quiet storm brewed. Marcus's role in the photo, his unwitting complicity in her trap, gnawed at her conscience. Yet it fueled her fire. His jealousy had handed her the key to this liberation. As the room cleared, Victor approached, his posture deflated, words sputtering. "You set me up," he accused, voice a bitter rasp. Aisha faced him squarely, her response measured and unyielding. "You set yourself up by underestimating me, by stealing what wasn't yours." He recoiled, the truth a slap he couldn't dodge, slinking away in disgrace. Alone briefly, Aisha exhaled, the victory's rush mingling with lingering scars, the gala's echo, the archive proofs, her mirror rehearsals converging in this pinnacle. She'd turned betrayal into a weapon, her precision dismantling empires built on deceit. But as she gathered her notes, Marcus's name flashed on her phone, a call she ignored, her steps firm toward the exit. This battle was won, her professional throne secured, yet the personal reckoning whispered of chains still binding her heart. The skyline shimmered beyond the glass walls, but Aisha's victory in the conference room still reverberated through her like an aftershock, having exposed Victor's theft with surgical precision on SEC compliance. She'd reclaimed her fintech designs, her voice, her standing as the trailblazer in a sea of skepticism. Yet as she stepped into her new office, now hers as project lead, the triumph felt hollow, unfinished. Marcus's betrayal, snapping and sending her flawed sketch to Victor, lingered like a specter, a reminder of the iron bars forged from jealousy and dominance that still confined her personal world. That evening, the air in their home hung thick with unspoken tension, a pressure cooker on the verge of eruption. Marcus slouched on the couch, eyes glued to the TV screen, but his silence roared louder than any prior argument, a storm cloud heavy with resentment. Aisha stood in the kitchen, Zoe's crayons scattered across the table, like colorful shards of innocence amid the debris. Her daughter's laughter echoed faintly from upstairs, a fragile thread of light piercing the gloom. "We need to talk," Aisha said, her voice slicing through the hum of the news broadcast, steady as a blade tempered in fire. Marcus's gaze flicked to her, sharp and defensive, his body tensing like a coiled spring. "About what? Your big promotion? Congratulations. You're the queen now, leaving the rest of us in the dirt." His tone dripped with bitterness, as if her success were a personal affront, diminishing him further in his own eyes. She drew a deep breath, her resolve hardened by months of his barbs, the gala's bruising grip, the sabotage that had unwittingly fueled her professional coup. "I'm filing for divorce," she stated, the words landing like quiet thunder, reverberating in the space between them. His face contorted, shock morphing into rage, eyes widening in disbelief. You're throwing everything away. For what? Your career? After all I've sacrificed, holding down the fort while you chase glory? He rose abruptly, his voice escalating, fists clenching at his sides. You think you're better than this? Better than me? I've seen how you light up at work, how you come home distant, like I'm just an anchor dragging you down. Aisha didn't flinch, her stance unyielding, the fire from the boardroom still burning within. You humiliated me, Marcus, at the gala in front of everyone. You tried to sabotage me, sending that sketch to Victor just to clip my wings. This isn't a marriage anymore. It's a prison, built on your envy and control. I won't live like this. Smothered, doubted, diminished. He paced, his anger boiling over, words spilling like venom. Envy? You bet I'm envious. You waltz through doors that slam in my face, getting handouts because of who you are, while I grind and get nothing. And now you want to walk away? Take Zoe, destroy our family. You're selfish, Aisha, always have been, hiding behind your ambition. The accusation stung, but she met it head on, her voice rising with controlled fury. Selfish? I've carried us, financially, emotionally, while you nursed your grudges. You weren't protecting our family. You were tearing it apart, piece by piece. I deserve better. Zoe deserves better. A mother who's free, not chained. He stopped, face reddening, the reality crashing down. You'll regret this. I'll fight you every step, custody, everything. You think you can just erase me? She turned away, heart pounding but unbreakable. The decision a liberation long overdue. The next day she met with her lawyer, presenting a dossier of evidence. Incriminating texts, the photo he'd sent to Victor, gala security footage capturing his outburst. What had once been her deepest shame now became her shield, irrefutable proof of harassment and sabotage. The filing was swift, a first strike in reclaiming her autonomy, the papers a declaration of war on the toxicity that had festered too long. In the days that followed, the divorce proceedings unfolded like a battlefield. Marcus's fury no match for the concrete truths stacked against him. He contested bitterly, hurling accusations in court, calling her absent, ambitious to a fault. But the judge's gavel fell in her favor, granting her primary custody of Zoe. The victory was bittersweet, a severance of ties that left scars, but it unshackled her from the cycle of doubt and control. Marcus's final glare in the courtroom, a mix of defeat and lingering resentment, was the closing chapter of their shared story. A man undone by his own shadows. At the firm, Aisha's triumph reshaped her reality in profound ways. The leadership, humbled by Victor's unmasking, elevated her to spearhead the fintech overhaul, her designs now the guiding star for the project's future. But she saw beyond personal glory. The office whispers, once laced with doubt, now buzzing with praise, revealed a systemic rot. Talent like hers, often sidelined by unspoken prejudices, demanded more than isolated wins. She proposed a diversity initiative, a mentorship program for emerging innovators, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds, overlooked in the elite echelons. The board approved it swiftly, recognizing the optics and the genuine value in her vision. Soon, Aisha found herself guiding Jamal through the program's inaugural steps. One afternoon, as they reviewed prototypes in a quiet corner, his eyes shone with admiration. "You've changed the game here," he said, voice laced with awe. "Not just for yourself, for all of us who felt invisible." She smiled softly, her tone firm yet warm. "We're only beginning. This isn't about one victory. It's about building ladders for those coming after." Their sessions became a beacon, Jamal's ideas flourishing under her wing, a ripple effect of empowerment that echoed her own ascent from the ashes. Her new life took root in a modest apartment, its plain walls and creaky floors, a stark, welcome contrast to the stifling luxury of her old home. Zoe's laughter filled the rooms, her drawings pinned to the fridge like bursts of color against the neutral backdrop. Isha's mother helped unpack, her steady hands a quiet anchor, while her sister arrived with groceries, their presence weaving a safety net of familial strength. One evening, after tucking Zoe in, Aisha stepped onto the balcony, the cool breeze tugging at her long, wavy hair. The city lights stretched endlessly, no longer adversaries but a canvas mirroring the life she was sculpting. She'd lost so much, the marriage that once promised forever, the illusions of security, but gained infinitely more. Unyielding strength, unbridled freedom, a future authored by her own hand. Zoe bounded out unexpectedly, clutching a drawing, her eyes sparkling with childlike wonder. "Mom, look!" she exclaimed, holding up a sketch of two figures, mother and daughter, standing before a house blooming with flowers. "It's us in our new home. Happy, right?" Aisha's heart swelled, the journey's weight settling into something warm and whole. She knelt, pulling Zoe into an embrace, her voice thick with emotion. "It's perfect, baby. We're enough. Just like this." The words were a vow, a promise to her daughter and herself, sealing the peace she'd carved from chaos. The divorce wrapped with finality, Marcus's appeals fizzling against the evidence's wall. Aisha led her team with clarity and respect, not fear, fostering an environment where ideas thrived unchecked. She returned to the balcony often, a cup of tea in hand, the hum below a testament to her resilience. Humiliated, betrayed, silenced, she'd rebuilt from the ruins, emerging not as victim, but as the architect of her destiny. Zoe's artwork, her team's trust, the glow of autonomy, they formed her new blueprint, a life fierce and free, shaped by her indomitable will. Zoe burst through the door, her small hands clutching a crumpled drawing, eyes wide with the unbridled joy only a child could muster. "Mom, look!" she exclaimed, thrusting the paper forward like a treasure unearthed from hidden realms. The sketch depicted two figures, mother and daughter, standing hand in hand before a house bursting with vibrant flowers, a sun smiling overhead in crayon streaks of yellow and orange. "It's us in our new home. See? We're happy forever." Aisha's heart clenched, then expanded in a rush of warmth that washed away the lingering echoes of battles fought. She knelt down, pulling Zoe into a tight embrace, the child's giggles vibrating against her chest like a healing melody. "It's perfect, baby," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. "We're enough, just you and me, building our own world." The words hung in the air as a solemn vow, a promise etched into the fabric of their future, binding them against the storms that had raged so fiercely. In the quiet moments that followed, as Zoe scampered back to her room with dreams of more masterpieces, Aisha lingered by the window, her fingers tracing the edge of the drawing now pinned to the fridge. The journey replayed in her mind like a film reel unspooling in reverse. The gala's crushing humiliation, Marcus's iron grip dragging her into the abyss, Victor's calculated theft, his mentorship a veil for exploitation, Jamal's quiet courage handing her the key to unlock the chains. Each betrayal had been a forge, hammering her resolve into something unbreakable, transforming pain into power. She'd emerged not scarred and diminished, but alight with purpose, a woman who had redesigned her fate from the rubble. The divorce proceedings had unfolded like a grueling siege, Marcus's anger a barrage that tested her every defense. In the sterile courtroom, he'd unleashed his fury, painting her as the villain, the ambitious wife who abandoned hearth for glory, the mother too consumed by success to nurture. "She's tearing our family apart," he'd roared, his voice cracking with a mix of genuine hurt and manipulative theatrics, eyes pleading with the judge for sympathy. "I've been the rock while she chased shadows. Now she wants to erase me, take our daughter?" Aisha had sat composed, her lawyer dismantling his claims with clinical efficiency, the texts laced with jealousy, the gala footage capturing his public assault, the incriminating photo he'd sent to Victor in a bid to sabotage her rise. "This isn't abandonment," her counsel argued, voice steady as steel. "It's escape from a cycle of control and resentment." Marcus countered with pleas, promises of change, but the evidence stood unyielding, a fortress of truths that no rhetoric could breach. The judge's gavel fell like a liberating thunderclap, granting Aisha full custody and a clean severance. Marcus's final outburst, a venomous whisper as he passed her in the hall. "You'll regret this. You'll end up alone," echoed hollowly, a dying echo of the man she'd once loved. But as she walked out into the daylight, Zoe's hand in hers, the weight lifted, replaced by a soaring freedom. No more walking on eggshells, no more justifying her light to someone threatened by its glow. She was unbound, her spirit soaring like a bird released from a cage. At the firm, her triumph rippled outward, reshaping the landscape in waves of change. Leading the fintech redesign, Aisha infused the project with her uncompromised vision. AI algorithms that not only maximize profits, but embedded ethical safeguards, turning data into a force for equitable growth. Her team followed not out of obligation, but genuine respect. The once skeptical colleagues, now collaborators, drawn to her clarity and inclusivity. Meetings buzzed with energy, ideas flowing freely without the shadow of Victor's ego stifling them. The diversity initiative she'd championed blossomed into a cornerstone program, mentoring voices long silenced in the corridors of power. Jamal thrived under her guidance, his prototypes evolving from tentative sketches to bold innovations that challenged industry norms. "You're not just leading," he confided one afternoon over shared blueprints, his voice laced with gratitude. "You're rewriting the rules, showing us it's possible to rise without losing ourselves." Aisha nodded, a quiet fire in her eyes. "That's the point. Lifting each other, turning barriers into bridges. We've all been underestimated. Now we prove them wrong. Together." The program expanded, drawing in fresh talent from overlooked corners, each mentee a spark igniting broader transformation. Whispers of her influence spread, turning her from outlier to icon, a beacon for those navigating similar tempests. In the apartment's cozy confines, life wove new patterns of joy and routine. Mornings began with Zoe's chatter over breakfast, her stories of school adventures, a balm against past wounds. Evenings unfolded in shared rituals, drawing sessions where crayons danced across paper, laughter echoing as they built forts from blankets and dreams. Aisha's mother visited often, her wisdom a steady anchor, sharing tales of resilience that mirrored Aisha's own. Her sister dropped by with treats, their bond a lifeline of unconditional support, reminding her that family endured beyond fractured vows. One twilight, as Zoe drifted to sleep mid-story, Aisha slipped onto the balcony, a steaming mug in hand. The breeze whispered secrets, carrying away the ghosts of doubt. She'd lost the illusion of a perfect union, the security of familiar chains, but gained a profound sovereignty, the power to author her narrative without apology. Marcus's shadow faded, Victor's downfall a footnote in her ascent. Strength surged through her, not as armor, but as essence, forged in betrayal's crucible, polished by perseverance. Zoe's drawing caught her eye again, a symbol of renewal. In it, she saw not just crayon lines, but a blueprint for tomorrow, a home built on love's unyielding foundation, flowers blooming from seeds of adversity. "We're enough," she murmured to the night, the vow reaffirming her core. The hum below pulsed with possibility, a rhythm sinking to her heartbeat. As weeks turned to months, Aisha's leadership at work yielded tangible triumphs. The fintech project launched to acclaim, her ethical integrations hailed as groundbreaking. Investors clamored for more, her name synonymous with innovation that married profit with purpose. Mentorship sessions with Jamal evolved into collaborations, his growth a mirror of her own evolution, from mentee to partner in reshaping the field. Home life deepened in richness. Zoe's first school play, where Aisha cheered from the front row, tears of pride mingling with joy. Quiet nights reading stories, Zoe's head on her shoulder, a sanctuary of peace. Challenges arose, sleepless nights juggling deadlines and parenthood. But Aisha met them with grace, her resilience a wellspring that never ran dry. Reflecting on the path, Aisha marveled at the alchemy, humiliation transmuted into empowerment, betrayal into breakthrough. Marcus's envy, Victor's deceit, they'd been catalysts, unwitting architects of her rebirth. She stood taller now, not despite the scars, but because of them, a testament to the fire within that no force could extinguish. On the balcony once more, tea warming her hands, Aisha gazed outward, the glow a reflection of her inner light. Zoe joined her, wrapping small arms around her waist. "Mom, what's next?" the girl asked, eyes curious and bright. Aisha smiled, pulling her close. Whatever we dream, baby, our story's just beginning. In that embrace, the world felt infinite, a canvas awaiting their strokes, a life redesigned, fierce and free, eternally hers to shape. Aisha's journey from betrayal to triumph reminds us that resilience can reshape even the darkest days into blueprints of strength. Her fire inspires. Now it's your turn. What sparked your heart? What battles have you fought to reclaim your voice? Drop a comment below with your thoughts, your city, or your vibe, and join our storytelling family. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for listening to Every Twist and Triumph. Your support lights up our world. Subscribe for more stories that ignite the soul, and we'll meet you back here soon, ready to craft new tales together. Until then, keep designing your own path to greatness. See you next time.